2022. And that was in October, the border opened up after or just coming out from the pandemic. And God spoke to my heart. I finished all my contracts and whatsoever with the R&D facility in Singapore. It's one of a very prominent one. Having worked there for just under 10 years, and about 6 or 7 layers below the Prime Minister's office. So what we do, impact the nation and bring transformation to the nation from a technology perspective. And we have some 5,000-6,000 scientists and engineers and whatever have you based in that institution that really is quite powered pack. All right, so I moved out of that and began to ask the Lord what He wanted for me. And in October, the borders opened up. In November, God said, you take the car and you drive into Malaysia. And I said, well, it's okay. I have my family, my brother's family rather, in KL. And I would visit with them, obviously, because it's been more than three years, right, or thereabouts, under the pandemic situation that we did not visit. And so just before that, the Lord, very interestingly took me through the distribution list of my ministry, the Last Days ministry. And I was just kind of like, just hopping through, scrolling through, and I stopped at a name. I don't know why I stopped at this name, but I stopped at that name. I called this sister in KL. I don't know her. She doesn't know me, but she's come on our teaching platform. And so I said, I'm coming to KL. I would like to visit with you all, fellowship with you all right, and just kind of get to know a little bit of the KL people. And that was how it sort of like, got started. I took my car, and then November, I went first foray into KL, not knowing a single ministry person. Kosong. Now I had people that I'm fairly networked with in Singapore, but not in Malaysia whatsoever at all. But my heart, for some strange reason, was reaching out and aching for connecting with Malaysians. Now it's coming from very, very strange, from a guy who is a pastor and who is a Malaysian. See, I have lost it. I've traveled the whole world over, operated at the very highest level in the work, the professional work that we do in technology development. But to me, there was no appeal insofar as Malaysia was concerned. All that I cared about is for the good makan, if I ever wanted to come. And that was about it. That was a despicable attitude, isn't it? Coming from a pastor some more. But for some strange reason, which I couldn't explain at that time, I was drawn. And when I went out in November, I got to see this sister. I'd say, I just want to visit. I just want to get to know a few friends there and make some friends. Because pandemic, no friends. Not in Malaysia anyway for me. Then she brought me, the short of it, to a prayer house in Kajang. And then they brought me to all the different places, mostly prayer houses in KL. And before I knew it, I found myself speaking to total strangers. And they put me on the spot. It's like, you're a pastor, what? So you share with us, you teach us, and you pray for us. And I said, okay, Lord, I mean, I thought I'm here to visit. How come, I'm put on the spot like that? But as a faithful minister, I did what I could do, possibly. And on December the 3rd, 2023, December 3rd, it's so clear inside me. It was the second time ever after the 3 years of lockdown. Took the car and drove to KL through the state of Johor. And passing the city or the town of Pago, it's on the highway, you actually don't go into Pago. For those of you who are familiar with Johor, suddenly I was arrested by a force I couldn't understand. A force that I had to yield to. And I had some inkling of it because of the way that God arrested me when I was doing my prayer walks in the night, some 2 years before that, March 2021. And I was locked down. I mean, locked down in a prayer walk. I froze. And I began to weep like a baby. I began to cry and wail, and I found myself calling out and speaking for Myanmar and praying for Myanmar. I couldn't understand it. I don't have connections or ministry or anything like that with Myanmar. It was like God was just putting something inside of me and birthing a nation into me. And ever since then, we've carried an extension ministry into Myanmar. So I had some idea of it. But this time I was driving 90, 100, 110. For 45 minutes, I interceded and prayed for Malaysia. The burden was so strong. And I was praying that things that I couldn't understand. And prayed like never before. Remember, I didn't care about Malaysia. I lost it. It's like, I don't need to be concerned with it. And as that burden became increasingly stronger, it was getting hard to drive because it was so teary. And as though that is not bad enough, I felt the Lord say to me, take out your mobile phone and record. I want you to record something for me. I said, hello, I cannot control the steering already. How to go and start recording? And it was such a mess. No good thing nobody was in the car, you understand? They would have said, Pastor Daniel, I think you better go to the site and wait, can or not? I drove on and for 9 minutes, I recorded a message. This message has gone out to some of your key spiritual national leaders. Because there's things in there that I know not what I was speaking about. And there was no witness in the car. I said, this is so strange, God. What are you doing? I don't need this. I don't necessarily want it. But God was shaping something, forming something very deep and profound in me. And that happened on December the 3rd. And then January 2023, the stirring began even more stronger than ever. And I couldn't throw it off. I couldn't shake it off. It's like, walking on that time back in 21, walking on my prayer walks. and then being frozen and cannot move. And praying for Myanmar, and if you were passing me and was weeping and crying and such a total mess, you would think this one gonna be cuckoo already. And you know, no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't shake these things off. And it just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And the difficult part was that, you know, it's hard to explain it. Why is this? Oh, do I have it on? See, I made the mistake this morning. I'm not going to do it again. It's on. Esther, is this thing moving? I'm going to pass this out. Each one of you will have this. You can have it for yourself if you want. Just help me to pass it out. Just whichever way, just give it out. And as you pass it out, I'm going to speak concerning this. And in that 9 minutes, I saw something I've never seen before. It's liquefied fiery network across East and West Malaysia. I didn't see Singapore in it. I couldn't understand necessarily all the implications of that at that point in time, but I could see very well defined liquefied fiery network because I'm a network technology kind of a person. I understand networks quite a bit. And so God spoke in that language to me so that I can relate to it or catch my attention. Otherwise, I would say, maybe a little bit too much. And that network ran through towns and cities, but it was very generic in that it was populating both West Malaysia and East Malaysia. But things were concretized in August of 2023. Jumping a little bit ahead now. When I was in Sitiawan, and I'll come back to Sitiawan in a moment. And we were preparing for major historical, momentous, never been done before kind of meetings in a fairly traditional Chinese town in Sitiawan for September. And the nations would be there. And all this we didn't know, but we were preparing what we could do. But in August, after spending month after month after month from February onwards, when my journey started to go into Sitiawan, I saw something that was profoundly affected me. And God spoke to me and said, son, it's not about Sitiawan. And I retorted back to the Lord. I said, God, I've made a lot of sacrifices coming into Sitiawan month after month. I've left my family behind. I've had to connect across Malaysia, pretty much Semenanjung, and to bring the teams in, to build prayer, praise, and worship capacity on a very consistent basis. The Chinese, and in particular the Methodists over there, not so easy to convince. They say, kita tengok dulu lah ini. Huh? And God spoke and said, it's okay, son. It's more than Sitiawan. It's about another S called Semenanjung. And it's about something that is even bigger than Semenanjung. It's about Malaysia. See, what God was doing surgical operation along the way to put back Malaysia inside of me, which I had lost as a Malaysian. And He cut it open inside, and He put it back inside of me, her inside of me. And made it so real to me as every time I drive across the bridge, I know that I'm going back to my land and my people. I'm going back to hear the voice of my land and my people. I'm going back to speak into my land and my people, because I am from that soil. And I carry something of that inside of me. And God says, that's yours. So destiny was over me, but I needed the land. I needed the nation. God is about nations. We talked about it earlier. Because destiny plus nations equal destination. And you are supposed to say, wow, that's good, But you must always understand that destiny is tied to the land hugely. Yesterday, we called for senior ministers from Indonesia and Singapore to bring their soil. We mixed the soil together with the Malaysian soil in front of 3,000 over people, because it was a national day of prayer. And then we poured oil into it, and we mixed it and stirred it. And we put it back to the same spot where that soil was taken in Malaysia. And we called upon the leaders of Singapore and Indonesia, as like Aaron and Hur, to hold up the hands of Malaysia, so that she can come into her destiny. And then Malaysia be truly Asia. Because Malaysia holds the key. It holds a very important key. And so these were things that were being put inside of me, and I've shared some of these, and I was amazed that some sisters, two of them in particular, one of them is actually among us. I just shared in the evening, and the next day she came out with a picture that you are holding, the prophetic drawing that you are holding. And it's somewhat like that. I'm glad she did it, and we are on that ship. You know how many people on that ship? 1,500 people. We took an entire cruise ship and took it around and say, you know, we're going to put intercessors and prayer warriors and worshiping warriors on board. Shut down the casino. And have 24 hours of praise and worship nonstop for several days. And as we traverse the Straits of Malacca, to release the things that God wants to release across the Straits of Malacca into the nations left and right. So this one over here is drawn by a third party who heard from another sister who was present with me to hear this description that I was providing. She took that description and tell another one who had nothing to do with, was not on board or nothing to do with us. And she drew it. And this time got angels pouring the liquefied fiery network. But she's not so accurate lah. All right? Because she poured, the liquefied fiery network was poured into the Straits of Malacca. Now there's some sense to that. But really it's on the western coastline of Semenanjung. If what I've shared so far didn't sit with you, hopefully this will. August 2023, God said to me, more than Setiawan. I said, Setiawan sudah already taken me, make me, too much out of me, taken too much out of me. How to look beyond that? So go and look at the map of Malaysia, especially of Semenanjung. I said, God, I technology man, you know, right? I don't look at maps. Huh? Except Waze. But in obedience, I did. In a split moment. You know, I'm a fairly analytical person. Engineers were right. They think like that. They are kind of, brought up like that. I want to analyze things, But this one I couldn't analyze because it was outside my scope. You see what I'm saying? God had to take me outside my scope. And in a flash, I saw something. And God spoke to me and said, son, what do you see? You think apa? I said, oh God, I thought I was going crazy. I see a woman's womb. And he said, you see right, son. What do you see? It's like, Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? And I said, I see a prophetic womb. Shaped in the form of the Andaman Sea, or across the, it runs from Myanmar down to Thailand and then into Malaysia. It's shaped like a placenta. And then it narrows down to the canal, above canal, in the form of the Straits of Malacca itself. And that was when it just blew me off. And I couldn't quite entirely process it. And God said, you see the vision of the liquefied fiery network poured over the coastline of West Malaysia? And I say, yeah, I see it. And he said, do you see the towns and the cities lining the western coastline? And I said, I see it. And he says, tell me what you see. And straight away, without thinking, from Penang to Setiawan to Port Klang, Malacca, Singapore. All are gateway towns and cities. All have much historical heritage. But it's for me to go in and find out beyond the historical heritage. What is it that God is speaking? And he says, if you bring the city gatekeepers, the leaders, the elders of this cities, and line them up and bring them into alignment, the coastline will be fired up. And that fire will break into the hinterland. Now you understand the picture that was being drawn and all of that. So it's very real to me. So my journey started with Siti Awan, with people whispering into my ears, and I'm Siti Apa. I never hear of this such a town. And I'm minding my own business in Singapore. I have plenty to do. And it's a 8 to 9 hours journey. My brother was telling me from Murut to Miri is 16 hours, so you're worse now. Take the car and go into Siti Awan. February the 7th, 8th, and 9th of 2023. See who? Don't know. Connect with who? Don't know. Just take the car. Even the cowboys who come to town, they also know, This one really don't know. And all I had was a Zoom with an elder of that town, who's now become a very close brother and friend, who said to himself, we better check this Daniel Puh fella out before he comes to town and then create a mess and chaos over there. And over Zoom, I shared with him what I saw, the vision and the burden. And he's a lawyer. He's a trained lawyer. And I was told, quite a hard man. After sharing with him about 40 minutes or so, he broke down and cried. That makes matters worse for me. I said, oh God, what have I done here? And he said to me, you must come, you must come. Total strangers talking like that. I said, God, I also don't know what to do. But in obedience, I'm going to do what you speak to my heart. Took the car, drove up, stopped at Putrajaya, went to one of the prayer houses over there and prayed for the city. And the next day morning, continued on to Siti Awan. First time in my life driving in, as I drove in, the portals opened. And I could see, just like Nathanael, the glory of the Lord penetrating through to this town. And the short of it is that this town, since 1903, 1903, those women folks, if you have given birth, you understand. It's about 9 months. So then I began to understand the womb a little bit more. The womb of a woman is very special. It holds life. The creative powers of God is through it in procreation. So there was so much it did. And all these 5 towns and cities, Reverend Dr. John Song, the great Chinese apostle, in his short life impacted whole of Asia, but largely China, and pronouncedly Siti Awan. Where it is documented in volumes, and I studied them, of the revivals that broke out there. And I say, God, if this is true, if this is real, then I want it. I'll die for it. I wanted it so badly. Next slide. This is, and as the picture broadened up even further, I'd spent a very hard year, a tough year, 2023, sowing deeply into Sitya One. See, the Chinese don't get convinced so easily. Because I tell you why. For Sitya One, they've heard people come through and talk about revival and redigging the wells of revival, particularly from the days of Dr. Johnson. And they, T&G, you have T&G card here, no? Touch and go. Ada tak? Ada, you shake your head means God lah. But God spoke to me and said, don't you touch and go. So you are to sow and plow in deeply. Don't touch and go. And month after month we went in there. And so towards December, penat ah. So I wanted to enjoy Christmas with my family. Is that okay or not? Then an Australian missionary, whom I also don't know, sent WhatsApp message to me. Pastor Daniel, you need to be in Tagi Nambo. I said, Tagi apa? I have no idea. Worse still, it's in Sabah, in East Malaysia, quite deep into the jungles. And I have never gone to East Malaysia. Never. And had no desire to go. And this message came, and this missionary lady, whose father had sown very deeply in the Taginambo, and is quite a well-known Scottish minister there. And of course, he has passed on now. Yeah, that was a legacy that was left behind. And then when the fire and from Barrio and Bacalalan and all that spread to Taginambo, 1973. 50 years later, 2023, December, they were celebrating their 50th anniversary. And God would have me go over there to be a part of that. See, it's not just enough to have the surgical operation to put back Malaysia inside of me. The tribes had to be written inside of me as well. When I went there, I saw the tribes. I saw the Dusuns. I saw the Dayaks. I saw the Kadazans and so on and so forth. And of course, there was Solomon Bulan, Rachel Bulan, and all of the family people there. For the first time of my life, I've heard a little bit about them for the first time of my life. And over a very quick breakfast, I shared with them a little bit of what I experienced in Sitya One. And they said, apa? Barrio saya tahu. Murut saya understand. This is Rachel Bulan speaking. All right. Bekelangan, I know. Taginambo, I know. You, Sitya One, I don't know. I said, okay, kita guna Zoom boleh? All right. And I'll explain to you lah and your father about this Sitya One thing. I never got to do Zoom with them. Never got to do Zoom. Was not even needed. January the 22nd last year, on their own expense, at their own cost. They call up KL. And some of the people in KL know a little bit about me and got connected with me at Taginambo. They called me up from KL and said, the Bulans want to come. I said, apa? That Bulan upstairs or the Bulans who Sarawak? I said, no, one Bulan said, you met lah. I said, what? No notice one. Then how to prepare? How to get the city gatekeepers and pastors and reverends and bigwigs and whatever have you, district superintendent and all those Chinese big names together to listen to their story. But they did. They did. See, something was put inside of them, the Bulans. They came and they seek it out on their own accord. Then they bring the waters from the wells where Dr. John Sung have drunk from, where our forefathers have dug and drunk from, where Watchmany in 1925 has drunk from, where some of us have drunk from. Those waters, those still flow. We took it back with them and put it into the paddy fields at the source of the water into the paddy fields. And the connection was made. Did I ask for all of this? No. But God was spinning this thing in such a way to bring it about. And it's quite remarkable. Next one, please. I'm not going to go through all of this for the sake of time. But a prophetic journey began. And God said to me, if you would be willing to discover, recover, uncover, unpackage that which I've hidden in the mysteries of revival in City One. And these 363 were actual Fu Chao Methodists that landed in City One. 363. God says, you get on this journey. It's about the journey. It's also about the end or the outcome. But the journey or the process is as important. And then to release into the prophetic, into the future. Next slide, please. This is a prayer chapel right in the middle, actually both left and in the middle, where Dr. Johnson actually preached from. 1935 to 38, 3 times he was there. And the whole town stopped work and come and flooded this place to hear him minister the gospel. And he was a fiery preacher, but he was also one who moved in signs and wonders, in miracles, in healing and deliverances. Next slide, please. And same thing in Malacca. God just told me, go take the car and go and drive, and I'll show you who I will lead you to. Next slide, please, Esther. I'm going to move fast. And then we started our meetings in the April 2023. Just a little less than 2 years ago. Next slide, please. There you see the wells, and they still exist. On March the 24th, we have 8 sisters whom I barely got to know because they're all teams coming from different parts of Malaysia. And they did something so ridiculous that you would consider it almost stupid. Without me knowing, they didn't tell me. Thankfully, they didn't tell me because I would have said, hey, don't do these kind of things. Some pastors are not so sharp. They go and clean the wells. Hello, pipe ada air. We need to clean these wells for what? Nobody drinks from there. And they clean the wells. And the gardener also joined them to clean the wells, pick out the twigs and everything. I don't think they knew what they were doing. If you were a passerby and walking past, you say, ini semua sudah jadi kuku. March the 24th night, one of your well-known ministers in KL preached in there, the memorial hall, and he referred to the wells. 1 week later, into April, something happened, and you can check it in your news. The water pipes broke that supplied water to that part of Perak. It's quite a huge part of Perak. And certainly entire Manjung was affected. And the city people, having prayed for maybe $5, $10 for the bottle, and it all ran out, they remembered, wow, the wells. And they went and took the water from the wells. See, God has a good sense of humor. He's trying to get a message across to the town. We were all talking about wells and redigging the wells of revival. And God says, I'm going to show you something. And that's what happened. This is actual. And next, please, Esther. Thank you. The nations came. Now, what has the nations got to do with Siti Awan? What have the anak sulung got to do with Siti Awan? Maybe orang asli, yes. What has the Indians or the Chinese from mainland China and India got to do with Siti Awan? But they heard and their hearts were stirred and they were moved and they came. And we had amazing times of praise and worship, extended praise and worship on the 7th night and on the 8th night, which was a power night. We ministered the gospel of the kingdom to touch the city. Later, I learned from Rachel something that stuck with me. She said, revival is unto the harvest. It's not just about the church. Yes, it is, but revival is unto the harvest. And I caught something there. And God was scaling us up to take towns or cities. How can you disciple a nation and take a nation if you don't know even how to take a city? You must learn and be skillful taking cities for God. And those 5 cities are what we were targeting. Next, please. Last year, beginning of last year, January the 5th, God says, now that you've known some Malachians, some of them quite stubborn, you go and get a commando team of those leaders that will be prepared to go to the confluence of the Malacca River into the Straits of Malacca. And I want you to release the voice of the Lord over the waters and then turn back to the land over Malacca. So we did some things at that point. I understand that our dear apostle has been to Malacca. I saw your clip at St. Paul's. It was a very good one, very good one. See, I do know some of the little things that you do. And God say, I've given you a pattern. Now you take that pattern. You know, patterns are important. You count the number of chapters that are given concerning the instructions for how Moses is to build the tabernacle. You think what God got no words to say and just try to fill the pages, is it? It was very detailed and specific about how it should be built. And the same needed to be understood concerning how we would move from city to city. And we took this into Malacca. Next slide, please. Can we move? Continue? Yeah. Next one. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. I know she's getting worried. No, I will cover that very quickly. So we saw this in November last year. We just came out from this. And again, it was momentous for the Malachians. And Solomon Bolan was there. We brought him because we wanted the revivalists, the pioneers of revival to come and to teach us concerning revival because they carried it inside of him. And also Johan Makmur, whom we have just met from Padang, Sumatra. See, a woman's womb cannot be one-sided, I say, God. God in Malacca showed me the Indonesian connection. Where Pastor Makmur was praying for 22 years for Malacca and for Malaysia. When he first babbled 22 years ago, this term Malacca, he had no idea what it was. See, when you tell these people Malaysia, they will know. When you tell these people maybe West Malaysia, they will know. But if you bring it down to the States, they don't know. So they don't know whether it's a people thing, animal, or place. But he was praying. He was speaking, Malacca, Malacca, Malacca. And God said, build a prayer tower. I want you to pray for Malacca. Thank God he obeyed. Thank God. 6 times a day they pray. M's pray 5 times a day. This one 6 times a day. And so I had to go there and see for my own eyes. And I said, you need to come to Malacca and bear testimony. This year, those of you who are from Penang, we are moving with your pastors and your leaders in Penang right now as I speak. I'm going to move Esther to right to the end of this section, and then we go into Israel. Just proceed ahead. Keep clicking, keep clicking. Some more, some more, some more. The end. Okay. You can't align with something that you don't know. You can align with that which you know. But that which you know must come by revelation. We spoke about this before. And once you receive the revelation, you must begin to walk in it. It's not just enough to talk about the revelation, to prophesy concerning the revelation, but to also be moving in it as the Spirit would give understanding. And then we grow in understanding, and God can birth the greater things and greater dimensions in our hearts. And it was in 2017. They were telling me, Pastor Daniel, you got to go to Israel. I said, Israel? Hot, dry, desert, very arid, not much to see. But God spoke and said, hello, son, my land, my people. You want to go or not? When he spoke like that, I said, okay, I will go and hear the voice of the land speaking and the people speaking. And from the north to the south to the east to the west, many of the places that we go to and through were off the track places, but where Jesus walked. One morning by the Sea of Galilee, quite early, we woke up to want to see sunrise. And had communion there. There were 13 of us traveling in 3 cars. By the shores of the Sea of Galilee, had communion. And the pastor who led us say, why don't you pick up a stone and bring it back as a kind of like a memento. So I said, okay, we can all do that, no problem. Plenty of stones around, plenty of very whitewashed, beautiful stones. And suddenly the Spirit of God said, that stone, hidden a little bit, that one. You know how many billions of stones there are? And my eye was like laser sharp, right at it. He said, pick up that one. I picked it up and turn it around. I said, it's a horrible looking stone. It's dark color. It's kind of like rough. It's not polished. And I turned it around and I saw my own face inside the stone. Now, if you think that is not Gila, I don't know what is Gila. I saw my own face. And I could see immediately, without even having to think, the pair of eyes, nose a little bit distorted, mouth very big. And he said to me, you will trumpet the Father's heart to the nations. I said, I don't blow trumpet. But what it meant was that I was processing and learning the Father's heart. And he was putting a piece of his heart inside of me and fashioning it inside of me. And he said, you're going to go to the nations and teach it and share it. So I'm giving you a new voice. See, at that juncture, I wanted to give up the ministry. I left one of the most successful church, mega church in Singapore. under the Lord's leading. And from there, I went into the wilderness. I said, this is not God. I gave up everything. But of course, it was God. But at this point in time, I needed a turnaround. Because I told God, I said, God, okay, I'm going to go to Israel. I've been all over the world. I don't need to go to Israel. Seen more beautiful things and places and so on and so forth. I say, if I go to Israel, you better shape something inside of me that will change my life and change the course of my ministry forever. Or otherwise, I go back to Singapore fishing. You know what Peter said, right? We're going to go fishing. That means I go and do the things I know how to do. But God did not leave me alone. By the shores of the Galilee, weeping and crying before God, just so broken inside. He said, turn to the hills, the rolling hills of Galilee. And I turn and I look. And it says, not only will I give you a new voice, I will also give you a new heart. I said, what's wrong with my heart? He said, you know compassion. You have plenty of professionalism. You know how to do your stuff on stage. I had a heart for people. It's not that I didn't. But it was something that he needed to form and shape inside of me. It would be of his heart. So it's not just the voice, but also the heart. And that's how God puts Israel back inside of me, into me. And I want you, if you don't pick up anything, this is vitally important. Next slide, please. If you want to understand the last days, or what some of you have called the end times, then the Middle East is the compass and Israel is the needle in the compass. Hey, that one my quotation, huh? You can use. Right? So if it starts in the Middle East, is that correct? Mesopotamia and the Euphrates and the Tigris and all of that, it will also end there. And that's why you need to understand Israel and the mystery of Israel. And that can only come to you when God forms it and shapes it inside of you. See, I was like the pastor of the big church. I know how to preach from the Old Testament, etc., etc. I know how to twiddle all the verses. But I know heart for Israel. Israel meant nothing to me. And God had to bring it inside of me and give me revelation and understanding slowly, piece by piece, layer upon layer, line upon line. And today I can speak about Israel quite a bit. And I don't speak of it just by way of study or anything like that, though that's important. I speak of it because I carry it inside of me. Next slide, please. All right, we will have to skip all this. All right, next slide. Next. This is a move permitted by God. You and I don't like anti-Semitism, and it's evil. But it is permitted by God. Do you know that you are in Bible times Bible prophecy times right now. And the miracle of Aliyah is happening right in front of our eyes. The last Jew, the last plane that left Ethiopia, I sold into that. I know exactly what that meant. Anti-Semitism is hugely on the rise. Move on, Esther. Got to move on. I cannot speak too much about this. So when God gives you, when you carry a love for Israel and you go deep into it, God will give you understanding from the Word. Even concerning Gaza, which you every time hear in the news. But do you understand what the Word of God says about Gaza and about Hamas, or spelled as CHAMAS, etc., etc.? When God fashions the nation into you and births it inside of you, it comes with revelation that blows your mind away, but it must be understood from the scriptures. Next, please. Next. Wow, this one, quite scary. Quite scary. Until today, I still want to know when the second highest man, instead of cursing Israel, which he wanted to do, twice he blessed Israel. Is that correct? Yeah, you see, you know. What was this interpreter interpreting? You know, the one that does the sign language, not interpreter, but the sign language. If you know, let me know. I wondered. Because this is a kind of like a Balaam reversal. And so when you understand Israel and you have that frame of the picture, you will also know how to pray for your nation and what is spoken by our national leaders. Even when I'm in Singapore, I weep. I go down on the floors of intercession and I cry out to my God. I say, God, forgive our Prime Minister, for he know not what he's saying. But these things, you know, if you don't carry Israel inside of you and you don't understand the covenantal relationship that God has with Israel, you will not be able to frame it to be able to strategically pray for the nation. Next, please. And we execute judgment. Do you know that? Is that in Psalms 149? That it is given for the righteous to execute the written judgment. Written means written. Written is not your own words. Written is not what you think. Written is what the Bible says. That's why we could execute judgment on Ismail Haniyeh and all the kings of Gaza. And the kings of Gaza is described as kings of Gaza in the prophetic scripture. See, these things become alive to you. That's why you need to carry Israel inside of you. And may God put it into our hearts. I have to bring this to a close now. Can we just move on? Watching over Israel. Hear the word I speak and give them warning from me. Next, please. The watchmen. You know, watchmen are called and you're given appointment and assignment, you're called out. There's a special place for you. It's called on the walls of Jerusalem. And you will cry out by day and by night and by night and by day. And you will learn how to remind your God concerning Israel. Next, please. Shammah watchmen, hear, hearken, and herald. Hearing capability, spiritual hearing, is very important. If you put your hand around your ear, you will hear that there is kind of like moving sound of air, quite turbulent inside your ear. And yet your voice, your eardrums can pick up some of the slightest voice. So in the midst of the turbulence in the Middle East, can you hear your Father's voice speaking and saying, son, I want you to know this. I want you to know that Tehran, with the Iranian Republican Guard, is calling for an emergency meeting. Do you understand emergency meeting, son? What are you going to do about it? I call the intercessors from all over and I say, we got emergency meeting. Because our emergency meeting must preempt and get ahead of that emergency meeting and change the course so that certain things would not happen that they desire to happen. See, God is quite a few steps ahead of the enemy. Amen. Quite a few steps. Actually, many, many steps. Way ahead of the enemy. And he knew that when this emergency meeting was going to be called, my heart was stirred. He put it inside of me and said, you better call emergency meeting. I said, I don't know how to call such last minute. Will the people come in or not? And all over Malaysia, in Singapore, they came in. And we had prayer. Hours of prayer into the midnight. Emergency response. Cut off the work of the enemy. And God gives this kind of things. If you carry the nation in your heart. Next, please. Okay, we're not going to go into this. We're going to bring this to an end here. So step by step, God had to show me Israel. And now, of course, we do have friends in Israel who we are aligned with. And continue to watch. And Jesus says to watch and pray, not watch and spray. We all like that because your WhatsApp is such a wonderful tool for spraying. Watch and pray. And the Shammah prophets, the Shammah gatekeepers, watchmen, you must develop strong hearing capability to watch, to hear, and to pray. I'm going to turn this time over to Pastor Deborah, and because I think there's some things that she wants to